Every country has a flagship export. Saudi Arabia has oil, Japan and Germany have cars, Sri Lanka has tea, and Canada has anti-vax freedom convoys. Frankly, it's becoming hard to keep track. France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, there's a freedom convoy everywhere. But as always, there is only one original, and that is Canada. Justin Trudeau's worst fears are coming true. Weapons are making their way into the convoy. On Monday, Canadian police arrested 11 protesters near the US border. They were carrying rifles, handguns, body armors and machetes. Anti-vaxxers were already scary. Now they're carrying lethal weapons. Does Trudeau have a plan to contain them? He says he does. The plan is an all-out offensive. Justin Trudeau is invoking emergency powers. Now, these are sweeping provisions. Trudeau can prohibit assembly, he can ban travel, he can order evacuations, he can also take over private resources like pickup trucks or tow trucks. These powers are granted for 30 days. But there's a strict process before implementing it. The emergency must be approved by the Parliament. This can be done in 4 situations. Number 1, for public welfare. Number 2, to bring public order. Number 3, international emergencies. And 4, war. Trudeau's government is using the second situation to bring public order. The Parliament has 2 choices now: approve the emergency or reject it. And this decision must be made within 7 days. We cannot emphasize how rare this move is. Only once has Canada imposed an emergency. That was in 1970. And guess who imposed it? A certain Pierre Trudeau, Justin's father. Pierre Trudeau imposed an emergency to fight separatists in Quebec. He deployed tanks and soldiers. Trudeau Jr., though, is not going that far.
We're not using the Emergencies Act to call in the military. We're not suspending fundamental rights or overriding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We are not limiting people's freedom of speech. We are not limiting freedom of peaceful assembly. We are not preventing people from exercising their right to protest legally. We are reinforcing the principles, values, and institutions that keep all Canadians free.
How is Canada reacting to Trudeau's move? Well, there are 2 opinions. One section says he is too late already, that Trudeau should have acted sooner. Another section asks, why bother at all? The protesters will gradually get bored and leave. Either way, this decision is bound to trigger debate. An emergency is not like a normal crackdown. You're suspending democracy. You're pressing pause on freedoms. Trudeau says it's a measure of last resort.
Invoking the Emergencies Act is never the first thing a government should do, nor even the second. The Act is to be used sparingly and as a last resort. Right now, the situation requires additional tools not held by any other federal, provincial, or territorial law.
As things stand, Trudeau has no other option. The protesters are carrying guns. They're turning up in full body armor. If he does not crack down now, things may escalate. But why did Trudeau let things go out of hand? Why did he let the freedom convoy grow? He could have taken a stance in January, either ban the protests or reach out to them. Instead, he did nothing. He let the freedom convoy grow. And for the record, Trudeau has done this before. Let me take you back to 2020. Canada was witnessing its largest railway blockade. The issue was a proposed gas pipeline. According to the proposal, the pipeline would cut through indigenous land. In response, there were railway blockades. Trudeau's response was the same. In Parliament, he called for patience, but 4 days later, he cracked down on the blockades. Around 10 protesters were arrested. Do you see the problem here? Justin Trudeau is indecisive. He seems unable to read developing situations. What constitutes a peaceful protest? What constitutes a public nuisance? Trudeau did not figure that out in 2020, and in 2022, he repeated the same mistake. Opinion polls in Canada suggest the same. Around 72% Canadians say the protesters must go home, but around 65% also say that Trudeau made the situation worse. In Europe, the leaders are eager to avoid his mistake. They have made up their mind. No talks, only crackdown. Take a look. Honestly, neither scenario is perfect. Letting protesters hold up daily life is wrong. If they're anti-vaxxers, even worse. But so is using violence on peaceful demonstrators. So how do you strike a balance? Perhaps talks first, then crack down. Now, we don't have a playbook on handling protests. Every country is different. Every protest is different. But Justin Trudeau has given us a playbook on what not to do. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.